The Galactic Concordance had stood for 12,000 years, and in all that time, the Telm scanner had never been wrong about a species. Not even once Director HFY moved through the halls of Kepler 9 station with practiced ease, her 6 limbs carrying her past observation windows that looked out into the endless dark of space, where stars burned like distant candles. She had performed the evaluation ceremony more than 3,000 times during her long career, and today wouldn't be no different, or so she thought. The humans were coming, and nobody expected much from them. They were a young species, barely 200,000 years old, and they had almost destroyed themselves with nuclear weapons just a few centuries ago before finally achieving stable planetary governance and reaching for the stars beyond their small blue world. HFY's assistant, a floating Quellan named Tyrsh, drifted beside her with notes displayed on its translucent body. The human delegation will arrive in 6 standard hours. Tyrsh chimed in its musical voice. Ambassador Chen Wei leads the group, and they have requested accommodations for a team of 12. HFY acknowledged this with a gesture of her upper left limb and continued toward the Chamber of Confluence, where the scanner waited. The chamber was vast and circular, with seats rising in tiers. Around the central platform, where the Telm scanner sat like an ancient monument to galactic unity. The device was older than the Concordance itself. Discovered on a dead world by the Ithral people, thousands of years before they had met any other spacefaring species. And its technology remained mysterious, even to the brightest minds in the galaxy. What everyone did know was that it worked perfectly. And without fail, when a species stepped onto that platform, the scanner would analyze everything about them from their genetic code to their evolutionary history and display the results as a colored line on the holographic displays that ringed. The chamber green meant physical strength, like the mighty Korvax, who could tear steel with their bare hands. Blue indicated intellectual power, like the Varasian scholars who had mastered quantum mathematics before developing agriculture. Yellow showed technological aptitude, such as the Mekler synthetic beings who were born from machines rather than biology. Purple revealed psionic abilities, like those possessed by the Etherian minds, who could touch thoughts across light years. Most species showed a combination of colors, and the exact shade and intensity told the Concordance where that species would fit in galactic society, what roles they would excel at, and how they could contribute to the greater good. HFY had seen every possible combination over her centuries of service, and she expected the humans would show some mixture of blue and yellow, given their recent technological advancement and their apparent cleverness in solving the puzzle of faster-than-light travel. She entered the scanner chamber and walked to the control station, where technicians were already running diagnostic checks, all systems optimal. Director, reported the lead technician, a methodical Prin whose 4 eyes blinked in sequence. The scanner is ready for the evaluation ceremony. HFY settled into her seat and reviewed the human files on her data tablet. Humanity had submitted extensive documentation about their species, including biological data, historical records, cultural information, and examples of their art and science. Nothing in the files raised any concerns. They seemed to be a typical carbon-based species with average physical abilities and decent problem-solving skills. There, planet Earth orbited a yellow star in a relatively quiet arm of the galaxy, and they had evolved from tree-dwelling primates over millions of years through standard natural selection. The most notable thing about them was how much conflict had marked their history. Wars and struggles between different groups of humans had dominated their development until very recently, when they had finally learned to cooperate on a planetary scale. But conflict was common among young species, and most outgrew it eventually, as the humans apparently had. 6 hours passed quickly as HFY handled administrative duties and prepared for the ceremony. Representatives from various concordant species began filling the observation seats in the chamber, curious to see the newest applicants to the galactic community. The Korvax ambassador settled his massive frame into a reinforced seat while a group of Eurasians took their places in the scholar section. Their large eyes gleaming with interest, a delegation of Etherians floated near the ceiling, their crystalline forms refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns. Finally, the announcement came through the station-wide communication system. Human delegation approaching Docking Bay 7. Kesvar made her way to the reception area, where she would greet Ambassador Chen Wei and escort the humans to the chamber. The airlock cycled open, and the human delegation entered the station. Ambassador Chen Wei stepped forward first. She was shorter than Kesvar had expected, standing only about 2 meters tall, with dark hair pulled back from her face and eyes that seemed to take in everything around her with quick intelligence. She wore a formal uniform of deep blue with symbols that represented Earth's United Government. Director Kesvar. Chen Wei said in flawless galactic standard, the trade language used throughout the concordance. On behalf of humanity, I thank you for receiving us. Kesvar performed the traditional greeting gesture and welcomed the humans to Kepler 9. She studied them as they exchanged pleasantries. They looked fragile with their soft skin and lack of natural weapons or armor, and they moved with a careful grace that suggested they were aware of their physical limitations. Behind Chen Wei stood 11 other humans of various ages and appearances, each one looking around the station with expressions of wonder and barely contained excitement. If you will follow me, Kesvar said, we will proceed to the Chamber of Confluence where the evaluation ceremony will take place. She led them through the corridors and explained the process as they walked. The Telm scanner will analyze your species and display the results for the assembled representatives. She told Chen Wei, the process is painless and takes only a few moments. You will simply stand on the platform while the scan completes. Chen Wei nodded and asked, has any species ever refused the scan? No, Kesvar replied. All who seek membership in the Concordance must be evaluated. It is the foundation of our society and ensures that every species finds their proper place among the stars. They entered the Chamber of Confluence, and Chen Wei paused for just a moment, looking up at the tiered seats filled with alien observers and then at the scanner platform in the center. The ancient device hummed with a sound that seemed to resonate in the bones, and holographic displays flickered to life around the chamber's walls. Ambassador Chen Wei, Kesvar announced formally as they approached the platform, you will be the first of your species to undergo evaluation. Please step onto the scanner when you are ready. Chen Wei took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and walked up the 3 steps to the scanner platform. She stood in the center and looked out at the gathered aliens with her chin raised and her hands clasped behind her. Bakashover activated the scanner, and the chamber filled with soft light. The ancient machine began its work, sending invisible waves of energy through Chen Wei's body, reading her DNA, analyzing the evolutionary path that had led to humanity, measuring everything that made her species what they were. The assembled observers leaned forward in their seats, and Kesvar watched the holographic displays, waiting to see what color would emerge. She expected blue-yellow, perhaps with a touch of green. Nothing unusual. The scan cycle completed, and for one heartbeat, the chamber held its breath in silence. Then, every display in the room blazed brilliant crimson red. The warning klaxon screamed through the Chamber of Confluence, and Ambassador Chen Wei stumbled backward off the scanner platform, her eyes wide with shock as red light bathed everything in crimson. Kesher felt all 6 of her limbs go rigid with disbelief. In 40,000 years of recorded history, the scanner had never shown red. Not once, not ever. Red was the color of catastrophe, the shade reserved for system malfunctions or theoretical threats so severe that the ancient builders had programmed it as a warning that should never appear. Lockdown protocol, Kesvar shouted. Over the blaring alarms, and blast doors began sliding shut across every entrance to the chamber, while security drones dropped from concealed ports in the ceiling. The Observation gallery erupted into chaos as species representatives leapt from their seats and demanded explanations in dozens of different languages. The Korvax ambassador roared and slammed his fists against the armrests of his seat, hard enough to crack the metal, while the Etherian delegation pulsed with agitated light. Patterns that filled the upper chamber with straubing colors. Chen Wei raised her hands in a gesture of peace, calling out, "Wait, what's happening?" But her voice was lost in the noise. Verse. Mind raced through possibilities, even as her training took over, and she began issuing commands to station security. A malfunction seemed most likely, but the scanners' diagnostic system showed all green, every circuit and sensor functioning perfectly. She ordered her technicians to run emergency protocols and turned to face Chen Wei, who stood surrounded by confused human delegation members who had pushed forward protectively around their ambassador. "I need you and your team to come with the security detail," Kasvar said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "This is not an arrest, but we must ensure station safety until we understand what has occurred." Chen Wei's expression hardened, but she nodded once and spoke to her team in their Earth language before addressing Kasvar again. "We will cooperate fully, but I expect a full explanation as soon as possible. We came here in good faith." 4 security drones escorted the human delegation out of the chamber through a side corridor, while the assembled representatives continued their uproar. Kasvar could hear the Eurasian scholars calling for immediate recalibration and the Meckler representative demanding a full systems analysis. The Kovacs ambassador was on his feet, bellowing that the humans should be expelled from the station immediately, and several other voices joined his call. She activated her communication link to the High Council chambers on the Concordance Capital Station 3 systems away. "This is Director Kasvar on Kepler 9. She transmitted, "We have a Code Crimson situation. The Telm scanner has produced a red reading." The response came back within moments. The voice of High Counselor Vadzim tight with urgency. "Repeat your last transmission. Did you say red?" "Confirmed," Kasvar replied. "The human species triggered a red scanner response. I have initiated lockdown protocols and confined the delegation to guest quarters under guard. Do not allow any humans to leave the station." Vexim ordered, "We are convening an emergency session of the full council and will transmit further instructions. Maintain constant surveillance on the human delegation." The communication link closed and Kasvar turned her attention back to the scanner technicians who were frantically running every diagnostic test in their systems. The lead print technician looked up from his workstation with all 4 eyes blinking in distress. "Director, I cannot find any malfunction. The scanner registers as fully operational." Kasvar moved to examine the data herself and saw that he spoke true. Every system showed optimal performance, and the scan of Chen Wei had completed normally with proper readings across all parameters except the final output. The machine had analyzed the human correctly and then deliberately chosen to display red. "Run another scan," she ordered. "Use one of the calibration drones as a test subject." The technician activated a floating drone and sent it to hover over the scanner platform while initiating a new scan cycle moments later. The displays showed the expected null reading gray, indicating no biological presence. Scanner responds correctly to non-biological targets. The print noted, making careful records. The mechanism itself is sound. Over the next several hours, Kasvar had 3 more humans brought to the chamber, one at a time under heavy guard. A young human scientist named Marcus Okonkwo went first, stepping nervously onto the platform while security drones surrounded him with weapons ready. The scan completed and blazing red filled the displays again. Then came Dr. Sarah Yuki, an elderly human physician who moved slowly but with dignity. Red finally. A maintenance worker named James Chen, who volunteered when asked. Red again. Just as bright and just as impossible. Each time Kasvar hoped to see a different result, and each time the scanner showed the same Crimson warning, she sent detailed reports to the High Council after every scan and began receiving responses from species representatives across the concordance. The messages ranged from scientific curiosity to outright demands for humanity's destructions. Several species recalled ancient legends about scanner warnings and what they might mean, while others insisted this was proof that humans were dangerous and should be eliminated before they could threaten galactic stability in the guest quarters, where the humans were confined. Chen Wei paced back and forth across the small common room while her team sat in worried clusters. The station had provided them with food and comfortable accommodations, but armed guards stood outside every door and surveillance cameras watched their every move. Why won't they tell us what's wrong? Asked Marcus, running his hands through his dark hair in frustration. What does red even mean? Chen Wei paused at the window and looked out at the stars beyond, a reflection ghostly in the transparent aluminum. It means they're afraid of us, she said quietly. I could see it in Director Kesvar's eyes, whatever that scanner showed. It frightened them badly enough to lock us up. Dr. Yuki spoke up from where she sat with her hands folded calmly in her lap. Perhaps it is a mistake. Their technology is not infallible, no matter how old or respected it may be. They've scanned 4 of us now. James pointed out, if it were a mistake, wouldn't they have seen different results? The door chimed and opened to reveal Kesvar, accompanied by 2 security drones. Ambassador Chen, the director said, I apologize for the conditions of your confinement, but I am required by concordance law to inform you that the High Council has convened an emergency session to discuss the situation. Chen Wei crossed her arms and met Kesvar's gaze directly. And what situation is that exactly? You've scanned 4 humans, and each time we've been met with alarms and weapons, but no one has explained what we've supposedly done wrong. Kesvar was silent for a long moment before responding. The scanner displayed red, a color that should never appear and has never appeared in recorded history. Red indicates either catastrophic malfunction or an existential threat to the concordance. And you've determined it's not a malfunction. Chen Wei said flatly, the scanner functions perfectly. Kesvar confirmed, which means according to its programming your species represents something unprecedented, something the ancient builders considered dangerous enough to warrant the most severe warning possible. The human delegation exchanged glances, and Chen Wei felt her stomach tighten with anxiety. We're not dangerous, she insisted. Humanity has struggled and made mistakes, but we've learned. We've grown. We came here seeking friendship and knowledge, not conflict. I believe you, Kesvar said, and her tone carried surprising warmth. But belief is not evidence, and the Council will require answers that I cannot provide. They are sending specialists to study your species and determine what triggered the red response. How long will we be confined here? Marcus asked. Kesvar's limbs moved in what might have been a shrug. Until the Council decides what to do with you. Days at minimum. Possibly weeks. She turned to leave but paused at the doorway and looked back at Chen Wei. For what it is worth, Ambassador, I hope we find that this is all a misunderstanding. I would rather welcome humanity to the concordance than fear them. Then she was gone and the door sealed behind her, leaving the humans alone with their confusion and growing dread. Outside in the station corridors, messages flew across the galaxy at faster than light speeds as the concordance mobilized to understand the impossible. What could make the ancient scanner blaze red when analyzing humanity? The answer would change everything. Darmikalon arrived at Kepler 9 station on the 7th day after the first red scan, and she came against the wishes of most of the High Council, who wanted humanity destroyed before whatever danger they represented could manifest. She was old, even by Eurasian standards. Her crystalline skin had faded from the vibrant blue of youth to a pale, almost white shade, and her large eyes carried the weight of 4 centuries spent studying how species evolved and adapted across the galaxy. When she entered the council chamber where Kesvar and the station administrators had gathered, every being present turned to look at her with a mixture of respect and skepticism. Dr. Miklon Kesvar greeted her with formal gestures. "Thank you for coming. I know the journey was long." Miklon settled into a seat designed for her species and spread her 3-fingered hands on the table before her. "The journey gave me time to review all the data you transmitted," she said in her whispering voice. "And I have reached a preliminary conclusion that I suspect none of you will like." The Mekler representative, a synthetic being named Unit 7, made it sound like grinding gears. "You believe the humans are dangerous, then? That we should eliminate them?" "No," Miglong replied sharply. "I believe we are asking the wrong question entirely. You all assume red means danger, because that is what you were taught. But has anyone considered that red might mean something the scanner was never designed to measure?" Silence filled the room as the assembled administrators looked at each other in confusion. Kesvar leaned forward with interest. "Explain your reasoning." Dr. Miklon activated a holographic display that showed the scanner's color spectrum from green through blue, yellow, and purple, with all their possible combinations. "The scanner measures evolutionary strengths," she began. "Physical power, intellectual capacity, technological aptitude, psionic ability. These are all traits that species develop to survive in their specific environments. The Korvax became strong to hunt megafauna on their high-gravity world. The Etherians evolved psionics to communicate across their gas giant home where physical form was impossible. The Varasians, my own people, developed intelligence to solve complex social problems in our hive cities." She paused and changed the display to show red standing alone, separate from all other colors. "But what if humans evolved something that does not fit into these categories? What if their primary evolutionary trait is something the ancient builders never encountered, and thus never programmed the scanner to properly display?" Unit 7's optical sensors focused on the display. "That is theoretically possible, but it seems unlikely. The scanner has evaluated 847 species successfully." "Successfully meaning it gave them colors we understand," Miklon countered. "But successful categorization is not the same as complete understanding. I propose that we stop treating the humans as a threat and instead study them properly to determine what trait triggers the red response." After considerable debate, the council granted Miklon permission to conduct direct research with the human delegation under strict security protocols. She made her way to the guest quarters where the humans had been confined for a week now and requested a meeting with Ambassador Chen Wei. The guards admitted her, and Chen Wei stood to greet her with obvious wariness. "I am Dr. Miklon," the Varasian said gently. "I am a xenobiologist, and I have come to understand your species, not to judge or condemn you, but simply to learn who and what you truly are." Some of the tension left Chen Wei's shoulders, and she gestured for Miklon to sit. "We've been waiting for someone to actually talk to us instead of just scanning us repeatedly. What do you want to know?" Over the following days, Miklon conducted extensive interviews with every member of the human delegation. She asked them about Earth's history, about human biology, about their cultures and conflicts and triumphs. She examined the genetic data they had provided and compared it to evolutionary patterns from hundreds of other species. What she found initially frustrated her because humans seemed unremarkable in every measurable way. They were not particularly strong. Dozens of species could overpower them easily. They were not the smartest Varasian children could solve mathematical problems that would stump human geniuses. They had no natural weapons, no armor, no venom or claws. They could not survive in extreme environments without technology. They had no psionic abilities at all. You evolved from tree-dwelling primates, Miquelon said during one session with Chen Wei and Dr. Yuki. You developed tool use in fire and agriculture. All of this is standard for technological species. Where is the uniqueness? Chen Wei thought for a long moment before answering. Maybe it's not in what we are, but in what we've survived. What do you mean? Miquelon asked, her attention sharpening till Yuki spoke up. Her elderly voice steady. Earth has not been kind to humanity. We have faced ice ages that covered continents, volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun for years, diseases that killed millions, droughts and floods and disasters beyond counting. Our genetic record shows at least 3 population bottlenecks where humanity was reduced to mere thousands of individuals. Many species face such challenges, Miquelon noted, though she was making rapid notes on her datapad. Yes, but most species either adapt to their specific environment or they die, Chen Wei said, leaning forward intently. Humans did something different. We adapted to adaptation itself. When the ice came, we learned to make fire and clothing. When the megafauna died, we learned to farm. When disease struck, we developed medicine. We didn't evolve to excel in one environment. We evolved to change ourselves to fit any environment. Miquelon went very still as the words resonated through her mind. She spent the next 2 days analyzing human genetic data with this new perspective. And what she found astonished her. The human genome showed evidence of incredibly rapid change over very short evolutionary timescales. Lactose tolerance had spread through some populations in mere thousands of years. High-altitude adaptations had emerged in isolated groups within hundreds of generations. Resistance to specific diseases showed up in populations that had faced those pathogens. You are generalists, Miquelon murmured as she studied the data. Every other species in the concordance specialized. They became the best at one thing, but humans remained flexible, able to become whatever they needed to be. She brought this finding to Chen Wei. Your genetic code is unusually prone to beneficial mutations, and your culture allows rapid spread of new ideas and behaviors. You are a species designed by evolution to evolve quickly. Is that what makes the scanner show red? Chen Wei asked. Miquel hesitated before answering. Partially, but there's something more. Something in your cultural history that I am still trying to understand. She requested access to Earth's complete historical archives and spent days immersed in humanity's story. She read about wars that had raged for generations and somehow ended in lasting peace. She studied the nuclear age when humanity had built enough weapons to destroy themselves utterly, yet had chosen to step back from the brink. She examined records of environmental collapse and technological crises and artificial intelligence scares. Each time humanity had faced potential extinction, and each time they had found a way to survive. Not just survive, but grow stronger, more united, more capable. During a late-night session with Chen Wei, Miquelon finally voiced her growing theory. Your species becomes stronger through adversity. Every crisis forces innovation. Every disaster triggers cooperation. The scanner does not measure what you are now, but what you could become when challenged. Chen Wei absorbed this quietly. And that makes us dangerous? It makes you unpredictable, Miquelon replied. Every species in the concordance can be understood through their evolutionary specialization. We know what they excel at and what they cannot do. But humans? She gestured helplessly. You are defined by your refusal to accept limits, by your insistence on becoming whatever you need to be. The scanner shows red because it cannot categorize you, cannot predict you, cannot contain you within its understanding. The implications hung in the air between them. What will the council do with this information? Chen Wei asked. Miquel's large eyes reflected the station lights. That depends on whether they see your adaptability as an asset or a threat, and I intend to help them choose wisely." She gathered all her research and prepared to present her findings to the High Council. Knowing that humanity's future among the stars depended on her ability to make the party, Concordance understand what the red warning truly meant. 3 days felt like 3 years to Ambassador Chen Wei as she waited in the guest quarters of Kepler 9 station for the High Council's decision. She had maintained calm in front of her delegation, but alone in her sleeping quarters at night, she lay awake imagining all the ways this could end badly. Humanity expelled from the stars, confined to their home system forever, or worse, destroyed as a preventative measure against a threat they did not even understand. On the morning of the third day, Director Kesvar arrived at the human quarters with an expression that Chen Wei could not read. "The council has reached their decision," Kesvar said quietly. "You are to come with me to receive their judgment. Bring your full delegation." The 12 humans followed her through the station corridors in silence, and Chen Wei noticed that the security drones that had shadowed their every movement for weeks were gone. She did not know if that was a good sign or a bad one. They entered a conference chamber where holographic projectors showed the faces of the High Council members arrayed in a semicircle. High Councilor Vexim's image flickered as he spoke. "Ambassador Chen Wei, we have deliberated extensively on the question of humanity's place in the galactic community. Dr. Mikolan's research has given us much to consider, and the vote was not unanimous." Chen Wei felt her heart hammering, but kept her voice steady. "We understand that our species has caused concern, and we accept whatever decision you have reached. We ask only that if you choose to deny us membership, you allow us to return to Earth peacefully." Vexim's expression might have been a smile. It was hard to tell across species barriers. "That will not be necessary. The Council has voted to grant humanity provisional membership in the Concordance." Relief flooded through Chen Wei so powerfully that her knees nearly buckled, but Vexim continued. "However, your membership comes with unique conditions. We cannot assign you a role based on the scanner reading as we do with other species, because the red warning indicates that traditional categorization does not apply to humanity." Another council member, an Etherean named Kreisha, spoke with thoughts that translated into words. "You will be the first species classified as adaptive. You will not be restricted to a single function within Concordance Society, but will instead be free to contribute in whatever capacity you choose. This is unprecedented," added a Varasian counselor. "But then, you are an unprecedented species." Unit 7's synthetic voice crackled through the transmission. "There are, however, restrictions that come with this classification. Humanity will be monitored more closely than other member species, and you will be required to submit regular reports on your population growth, technological development, and expansion activities." Vexim nodded. "We must balance the potential benefits of your adaptability against the uncertainty it represents. Trust must be earned over time, and we will be watching to see whether humanity becomes the ally we hope for, or the threat some council members still fear." Chen Wei understood the subtext. They were being accepted but on probation. Welcomed, but watched. It was better than she had dared hope for, and yet it stung to know that humanity would always be viewed with suspicion. "We accept these terms," she said formally, "and we thank the Council for their trust. Humanity will prove worthy of this opportunity." The transmission ended and Chen Wei turned to find Kesvar watching her with an expression that seemed almost relieved. "Congratulations, Ambassador," the director said. "You are now officially a member species of the Galactic Concordance. I will help you navigate the integration process and introduce you to the various departments and services available to member species." Over the following weeks, the human delegation worked tirelessly to establish formal diplomatic relationships with other species and to begin the process of bringing Earth into the galactic community, Chen Wei met with representatives from dozens of worlds, each with their own perspectives on humanity's unusual classification. Some were welcoming and curious, while others remained distant and wary. The Kovacs ambassador made it clear he would be watching humanity closely for any sign of aggression, while the Varasian scholars were eager to study human culture and psychology in greater depth. The Armicolon became an unexpected ally and friend, spending hours with Chen Wei discussing the challenges ahead. The Concordance is vast and ancient, Miquelon said during one of their conversations, and change comes slowly to such institutions. You will face prejudice and suspicion for generations to come until humanity proves itself. We've faced worse. Chen Wei replied with a slight smile. At least we're facing it together now instead of alone. One evening, Chen Wei stood at the observation window in her quarters, looking out at the stars and thinking about everything that had brought them to this moment. The door chimed and Dr. Yuki entered, moving slowly to stand beside her. What troubles you, Ambassador? The elderly woman asked gently. Chen Wei was quiet for a long moment before answering. Dr. Miquelon told me something yesterday that I cannot stop thinking about. She said that in all her research she found that humanity's greatest leaps forward came from our darkest moments, that we become strongest when we are most threatened. This is true. Yuki agreed. Our history shows this pattern clearly. But what happens now? Chen Wei asked, gesturing toward the stars. We have joined a civilization that has been stable for 12,000 years, a society that has not faced a major crisis. In living memory, if we truly become strongest through adversity, what will we become in a galaxy at peace? Yuki considered this carefully. Perhaps we will learn to adapt to peace as we once adapted to conflict, or perhaps, she paused, her eyes distant, perhaps the galaxy will eventually need the strength that only comes from surviving catastrophe. And when that time comes, humanity will be ready. The thought was both comforting and unsettling. Back on Earth, news of successful first contact spread like wildfire, and celebrations erupted across the planet as humanity rejoiced at being welcomed among the stars. But Chen Wei, standing at the window of Kepler 9 station, felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Every human action from this point forward would be scrutinized and judged not just as individual choices, but as evidence of what their species might become. The red warning on the scanner would never truly go away. It would remain in the Concordance's records as a permanent reminder that humanity could not be predicted or contained by normal categories. As weeks turned into months and the integration process continued, Chen Wei watched other species gradually begin to accept humanity's presence. Young Varasians came to study at Earth universities, while human scientists joined research teams on distant worlds. Trade agreements were negotiated and cultural exchanges arranged slowly. Carefully, humanity began to weave itself into the fabric of galactic civilization, and through it all, the Telm scanner sat in the chamber of confluence on Kepler 9 station. Ancient and patient, whenever a human approached the platform, the displays would glow crimson red. That impossible color that had never appeared before and might never appear again. Species representatives who came to witness the phenomenon would watch in fascination and fear, wondering what the future held for this unpredictable species. Carver made it her personal mission to ensure humanity's successful integration, and over time, she came to see the red warning not as a threat, but as a promise. Promise that when the galaxy faced its next great challenge, whether in years or centuries, humanity would be there to adapt, to transform, to find solutions that specialized species could not imagine. Late one night, long after the human delegation had departed to begin establishing Earth's embassy on the Concordance capital station, Kesvar stood alone in the chamber of confluence. She approached the Telm scanner and placed one limb on its ancient surface, feeling the hum of power that had endured for millennia. What did you see in them? she whispered to the machine, knowing it would never answer. What potential did you recognize that we almost destroyed out of fear? The scanner remained silent, but Kesvar thought she understood. Now, it had seen a species that refused to be limited by what they were and instead embraced the infinite possibilities of what they could become. As she left the chamber and the lights dimmed behind her, the scanner's displays flickered once with crimson light and then went dark, somewhere among the stars. Humanity's journey into the greater galaxy was just beginning, and the future stretched out before them unknown and unpredictable, exactly as it should be for a species whose greatest strength was the courage to transform in the face of the impossible. The red line would shine forever in the Concordance's records, a warning and a promise that among all the specialized species of the galaxy, humans alone remained undefined, and in that uncertainty lay either salvation or doom. Time would tell which it would be. The High Council chamber was a massive sphere floating in the void between stars, connected to the Concordance capital station by quantum-locked transit tubes that defied conventional physics representatives. From all 847 member species filled the curved seating that ringed the central presentation platform, and every one of them had come to hear Dr. Miquelon's findings about the humans who had made the ancient scanner blaze impossible. Red Keshver sat in the administrative section with her limbs folded nervously. She had grown to respect the human delegation during their weeks of confinement on Kepler 9, and she desperately wanted the council to accept them rather than destroy them. High Counselor Vexim called the session to order with a sonorous chime that echoed through the chamber. Dr. Miquelon, you have spent 23 days studying the human species. Present your conclusions. Miquelon rose from her seat and moved to the central platform with slow dignity. Befitting her age, she activated the holographic displays and Earth appeared above her. A blue-green jewel spinning in the darkness. Honored council members, she began, her whispering voice amplified throughout the chamber. I stand before you to explain why the Telm scanner shows red when analyzing humanity. And I will tell you now that the answer is both simpler and more profound than anyone has guessed. She changed the display to show the evolutionary timeline of humanity from early primates through various hominid species to modern humans. Like many of you, I initially assumed that humans must possess some hidden power, perhaps latent psionics or undiscovered technological capability, but extensive testing has proven this false. Humans are physically average, intellectually competent but not exceptional, and completely lacking in psionic ability. Murmurs rippled through the assembled representatives, and the Korvax ambassador's voice boomed out. Then why does the scanner warn us about them? Because, Miquelon replied, letting the word hang in the air. The scanner is not warning us about what humans are. It is warning us about what they become. She brought up genetic analysis charts showing human DNA compared to other species. Humans are evolutionary generalists in a galaxy of specialists, where the Korvax evolved tremendous strength for their environment and the Varasians evolved superior intelligence for theirs. Humans evolved something entirely different. They evolved the capacity to evolve rapidly. The display showed population genetics data, mutation rates, and adaptation timelines. The human genome is unusually flexible and prone to beneficial changes. Populations can develop significant adaptations within mere thousands of years, and their cultural transmission of knowledge allows even faster behavioral evolution. When faced with cold, they did not wait millions of years to grow fur. They invented clothing within generations. When their prey animals went extinct, they did not starve. They invented agriculture within centuries. Unit 7, the Mekla representative spoke up. Adaptability is advantageous, but hardly unprecedented. Many species show environmental flexibility. True, Miquelon acknowledged. But human adaptability goes deeper than environmental adjustment. It is psychological and cultural, as much as biological. Let me show you something. The displays changed to show Earth's historical timeline with marked crisis points. Humanity has faced extinction-level threats at least 17 times in their recorded history: ice ages, volcanic winters, pandemic diseases, ecological collapse, nuclear weapons, runaway climate change, artificial intelligence emergence. Each time, they stood at the precipice of total annihilation. She highlighted each crisis point as she spoke, and each time they did not merely survive, they emerged stronger, more unified, more technologically advanced than before. The nuclear age nearly destroyed them, but led to their first global governance. Climate collapse forced them to develop clean energy that powered their expansion into space. Artificial intelligence crises taught them to create ethical frameworks for sentient machines. The chamber had gone completely silent as representatives absorbed this information. Mikola's voice grew more intense. Do you understand what this means? Humans do not just adapt to their environment. They adapt to catastrophe itself. They have developed a collective psychology that treats existential threats as opportunities for transformation. She brought up brain scans and psychological profiles. Human neurology shows enhanced pattern recognition for identifying threats, combined with exceptional creativity for generating solutions. Their social structures emphasize cooperation under pressure, even when competing during peacetime. They are literally evolved to thrive through crisis. High Counselor Vexim leaned forward in his seat. This is fascinating, but how does it explain the red scanner reading? Miquelon took a deep breath before delivering her conclusion. The Telm scanner was built by an ancient civilization to measure species based on their primary evolutionary strength: physical, intellectual, technological, or psionic. But humans' primary strength is none of these. Their strength is transformation, the ability to become whatever they need to be when faced with sufficient challenge. She let that sink in before continuing. The scanner shows red because it cannot measure potential. It cannot predict what humans will become because humans themselves do not know. Until the crisis arrives, red is not a warning of current danger. It is a warning of fundamental unpredictability. The Etherian delegation pulsed with agitated light patterns, and their spokesperson projected thoughts into the chamber. Then they could become anything: friend or enemy, ally or conqueror. How can we trust species that we cannot predict? That is the question the Council must answer, Miquelon said gravely. But I would ask you to consider this: the Concordance has remained stable for 12,000 years because we understand each species' role based on their evolutionary strengths, but stability without challenge breeds stagnation. We have not faced a galaxy-wide crisis in millennia, and perhaps we have grown complacent. She changed the display to show galactic threat assessments. Our models predict several emerging challenges: the expansion of the void entities in the outer rim, the degradation of ancient jump gate networks, resource depletion in core systems. We have been fortunate that none have reached critical levels, but someday our luck will end. Miquelon's large eyes swept across the assembled representatives. When that day comes, when the Concordance faces a threat that our specialized species cannot overcome through their defined strengths, perhaps humanity's unpredictability will be exactly what we need: a species that transforms under pressure, that refuses to accept limitations, that finds solutions where specialists see only impossibility. The Korvax ambassador stood, his massive frame towering even in the curved seating. You ask us to gamble the safety of 847 species on the hope that humans will become our saviors rather than our destroyers. I ask you to recognize that the red warning is not a condemnation, but a choice, Miquelon replied steadily. We can destroy humanity out of fear of what they might become, or we can embrace the uncertainty they represent, and trust that the same adaptability that let them survive 17 extinction events will make them valuable members of our galactic community. Debate erupted throughout the chamber, with species representatives arguing passionately. On both sides, some insisted that unpredictability was too dangerous to tolerate, while others pointed out that diversity of strengths had always been the Concordance's foundation, and humanity simply represented a new type of strength. HFY found herself rising to speak, something she had never done in council session before. I have spent weeks with the human delegation, and I have seen their curiosity, their desire to learn, their genuine wish to contribute to something larger than themselves. They did not come to us seeking conquest. They came seeking community. High Counselor Vexim called for order as the arguments continued and finally announced, "This decision is too important to rush. The Council will deliberate and vote within 3 standard days. Dr. Mikulon, your research has been invaluable and will be studied carefully. Kepler 9 Station. Maintain current security protocols until we reach our decision." As the session adjourned and representatives filed out, still arguing among themselves, Mikulon remained on the central platform, looking up at the image of Earth that still floated above her. She had done everything she could to help the Council understand humanity, but she knew that understanding did not guarantee acceptance. Fate of an entire species now rested on whether the galaxy could learn to embrace unpredictability in a universe that had always valued certainty.